Hi there. I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Very pleased to welcome you to today's webinar. The topic is Get Your Head in the Cloud, Modern Security Challenges and Solutions. Our presenter today is JT Rakuten. He's a security product marketer with Sumo Logic. But before I bring him onto our virtual stage, let me give you some background on our session today. So today's forecast is cloudy with a chance of headaches, heartburn, and a whole lot of unforeseen security challenges. Digital transformation may not be a new term, but it is nonetheless still very much a part of the roadmap for many companies. No matter if one is cloud native or newly embracing the cloud, the issues of securing your cloud infrastructure can be daunting, from managing misconfigurations to monitoring of hundreds of microservices. Managing your cloud attack surface can leave you feeling like Sisyphus. But if you're feeling a little bolder, you can take a deeper dive into how you can get your head in the cloud and in the cloud security game. And that is what this session is all about. So, a bit of information about my organization. Information Security Media Group is a global education and intelligence firm, just turned 17 years old. And you may know us, of course, by any of our 36 media properties. They include Bank Info Security, Gov Info Security, and Data Breach Today. In all, we serve an audience of over more than 1.3 million security and technology executives, and we give them on a daily basis a diet of news, analysis, research, events, and educational programs just like this one. A few notes of housekeeping. If you have any questions for JT, you can submit them anytime by the chat window on your screen. I warn you, I might not be able to get to every question today, but for any questions we don't answer in the course of this session, we will get responses back to you via email. Should you encounter any technical issues while viewing today's webinar, please take down the email address you see on your screen. If you write to webinars@ismg.io, we've got support staff standing by to help. Also, a reminder, today's webinar is copyrighted material. It's meant for today's session and individual study purposes only. If you would like to use any of the information presented today, or if you're looking for customized training materials, please contact us. Thrilled to introduce our sponsor, Sumo Logic. Sumo Logic empowers the people who power modern digital business through its continuous intelligence platform. Practitioners and developers around the world rely on Sumo Logic to gain real-time analytics and insights from their cloud-native applications, helping them ensure application reliability, secure and protect against modern security threats, and gain insights into their cloud infrastructures. As for our speaker, JT Rakuten, he's currently a security product marketer at Sumo Logic, began his marketing journey when he stole his dad's tape recorder to capture his ideas for made-up advertisements. He's honed his skills in product content and multimedia marketing for over 10 years and has expertise in cybersecurity technologies and AI. With that, let's bring on to the virtual stage here, JT Rakuten. JT, thanks so much for being a part of this conversation today.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just stoked. I'm excited. I'm grinning ear to ear here.
Excellent. Look, I talked about this a little bit, digital transformation. It's not necessarily new. It hasn't gone away. Where would you say digital transformation legitimately began, and what legacy has it left for us?
Yeah, I mean, without getting too far into the weeds, you could argue that the Industrial Revolution might have even been, right, the start of digital transformation as we know it. But we've come a long way since then. We're not necessarily talking about Alan Turing either. So in the modern context, really it's the 90s, the 1990s, where digital transformation started to gain more of a foothold, I would say, in both our common lexicon and zeitgeist, right? We all remember the dot-com bubble, right, of the 90s and the boom there. And that was really, ushering in the new era of adopting the internet, right? It was the internet had finally become more ubiquitous, maybe not as ubiquitous as we know it today, but definitely much more of a household thing. I mean, I remember, my parents had a dial-up modem, would make all those like squeaking noises, and God, it was slow. It was slow, and I love the fiber internet I have today, right? But fast forward to the early 2000s, after the dot-com burst, right? And then you have some other landmark things like the Microsoft antitrust case, right? This kind of put a damper, I would say, on people just like all clamoring to get onto this thing called the internet and just do everything and anything possible on the net, right? So when you take it to that business context, you have information, of course, being shared much faster than it ever has been. You can enable a global workforce, right? You can have asynchronous working conditions, which we know very well, I think, in the post-COVID, world that we live in. And so yeah, then I would say we're kind of in the middle of another industrial revolution at this moment in time, which I'm sure we're gonna expand upon, a little later, but the very essence of how we work has been irrevocably changed. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk about that because if you talk
Yeah.
about digital transformation, you have to talk about the mass cloud migration we've seen over the past 3.5 years. How has that recreated not just how we work, but how we practice cybersecurity?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you got 2 points in there, both how do we work, right? And then what does it mean for cyber? And I mean, as far as it goes for the how we work, the benefits of cloud economics, everybody's kind of taking them for granted, I want to say nowadays. And everyone just says move to the cloud, do this, do that, da, 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 without really understanding the necessary ramifications around what it means to actually migrate to the cloud, right? So, with respect to the first point of how has it changed how we work, I would say it has changed it for the better. I'm painting with a broad brush here, so don't hold it against me. But I would say that, again, it allows us to work remotely. It allows us to be productive kind of on our own time. It's really helped, I would say, with that work-life balance. It's even helped with cutting down pollution, right? No more lengthy commutes sitting in traffic for 2 hours. But it has brought on a host of security challenges, right? And how we practice security. Because before you used to basically go into the office, in an enterprise tech company, you would have to go into the office and you would use your company issued equipment. And all of that was done on a secured network that was fully maintained by your employer. You had all sorts of other security apps that were built in on your own computer, right? To make sure that you weren't doing anything you weren't supposed to. Everything was very contained, right? And you could even think, back in the day when basically on premises was the only option that we had for how to secure things. That's evolved and very, very quickly, right? And so now we're shifting to either full remote work or hybrid work environments. Now you're going to have to balance whatever is done in your enterprise, office environment with what are your employees dealing with at home? How do you know that they have secured networks that are properly encrypted, right? How do you know that they're not leaving their laptop open and maybe their child comes over and decides that, hey, I'm going to just go use mom or dad's laptop and I'm just going to go play around and do some other stuff, and before you know it, they've leaked some information or they've downloaded something that they shouldn't have, right? So there's a very wide reaching range of different things that we're kind of encountering. We're still all figuring them out, I would say. But as far as it goes for how we practice security, I think the silver lining is it's really drawn a critical eye to security as a whole, as opposed to making security more of an afterthought, right? Security used to be a compliance checkbox for a lot of people. And now we're looking at, okay, how can you be proactive with this, especially as the threat landscape that we're seeing nowadays is evolving. And cyber criminals, the dwell time used to be something like 100 days, ballpark. I was reading a report recently where the dwell time in the cloud has dwindled to about 8 days, right? So the speed with which bad actors can badly act is much faster on a scale that we haven't seen before because they're becoming cloud native too.
So, JT, you had the opportunity to see lots of organizations across sectors. Where are the biggest security gaps you see in their hybrid environments today? And many of them do have hybrid environments.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I kind of was starting to touch on that a little bit with my previous answer. But you now have both hybrid working conditions and then on-prem and cloud environments working together simultaneously, right? So if you think about it, if you are training your employees appropriately to follow, the correct security protocols, yeah, you're probably pretty well off, I would say. And you can trust, I hope you vet your employees. You can trust that they're going to, not let their children play around on their computer. But then looking at it from the hybrid mix of on-prem and cloud, you start to see things like, do you have visibility into both environments? How are you ensuring that the appropriate security controls are in place in both environments, right? How does compliance, which I very briefly touched on, not in depth, of course, but how is it that compliance is being maintained and demonstrated across on-prem, right? And the cloud. And when you move to the cloud, you're not embracing the, I know this is going to sound archaic, right? But the perimeter security, right? Where you really had to just hold your crown jewels in the middle of your castle and build walls as thick and as high and put parapets and all that other stuff. That was basically the solution for on-prem things. But now when you're moving to microservices architecture in the cloud to get the benefits of cloud economics, the way I look at it is you're creating however many microservices you have, those are micro perimeters now, right? You've got to make sure you have a handle on all of those apps, and I mean, ask someone to count to 100, they're going to go 1 2 skip a few 100. They're not going to spend time counting to 100, let alone trying to manage 100 different security tools, right? And so I mean, those are the gaps that I see, with the customers that I interact with here. Is that's really their question: how exactly can I get a better handle on all of these different point solutions that might be very, very good, right? They're very robust point solutions, but how exactly do I manage all of these things in a single control plane, right? And that's where Sumo comes into its own.
JT, you covered a lot there. You talked about trust,
Yeah.
talked about visibility, controls, compliance. What do you find most important about how we secure our environments today? And I'll say that beyond configurations.
Sure, sure. So as far as it goes with that, I mean, if you have all of these point solutions, and like I said, they could be the best, they could be best of breed, right? If they don't give you anything actionable that you can do, if they don't produce alerts that give your SOC team the ability to just pounce on a potential security incident, what good are they, right? And I feel that this also starts to come into its own with the shared responsibility model when moving to the cloud as well. And that's something that is it's not maybe widely talked about when you are kind of starting your cloud migration journey. And I have a little slide here to show. So here I just took a couple quick screenshots of the shared responsibility diagrams from Microsoft Azure, GCP, and AWS. And you can see that in each of these different diagrams, they lay out very succinctly in a nice, fun little diagram here, everything that they are responsible for and everything that you are responsible for. But something that I want to kind of call attention to is the difference between all three diagrams and how they show what the cloud provider is responsible for and what you're responsible for, right? Microsoft Azure is in the top left box, and they have a bit of a gradient where some things are shared between customer and cloud provider. GCP just has almost like a sliding scale, and then Microsoft almost has like an architecture diagram. So you go to three different cloud providers and you get three different answers as to what you're solely responsible for and what they're responsible for. And which kind of the commonality between all of them is that they are basically in charge of anything hardware related, right? Versus anything like data security falls squarely on your shoulders, right? They assume no responsibility and they're not going to be held accountable in the event that you were breached. So to that, I would say that really, when it comes to securing things, it's not a matter, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, it's not a matter of if you're breached, it's when you're breached, right? And are you fully prepared to react appropriately with all the tools that you have at your disposal? Are you prepared to act appropriately when the time comes?
But JT, we're 20 minutes into it. It's time to ask this question.
Sure.
With the rise of emerging technologies such as, drumroll, generative AI,
Oh, yeah.
where would you say we're headed?
I love it. I love it. And I've also got another little slide for this because I had a suspicion. So two of my favorite films. Hopefully these are familiar to yourself and some good folks in the audience, of course. With generative AI, when it first kind of came out with Chat GPT and everything, of course, taking the internet by storm and all the things you could do with it, right? It's kind of the age-old question of, has science gone too far? More on this at 11 or whatever. And it just really reminded me of Star Trek 4, where Scotty picks up the mouse and says, "Hello, computer." He's trying to talk to it, and we're there, right? Science fiction is starting to become science fact. But I wanted to balance it with with the image of Jeff Goldblum there from Jurassic Park on the right hand side, where it's one of those things where, did we really think this through, right? And so with the rise of things like generative AI, it could be used, maybe to help your kids, cheat on their essays, but it could also be used for good, right? And where we see things like Gen AI coming into play with security is using the natural language processing, which these solutions are so good at, right? Using that to maybe make a recommendation for how to remediate, right, an incident using natural language. So it's not just firing an alert now saying, hey, you really should check something. It looks like there's been some data that's been exfiltrated, right? It could actually say in natural language, this has gone on. You should really check out your MongoDB instance because we've noticed that at this time, data was exfiltrated by a user that just escalated, their privileges steadily over the past hour. And previously, there was a land speed violation where they logged in from California, and then they also logged in from Russia in 2 minutes, right? That amount of context being parlayed to you as a security analyst, right, or someone who's active in a SOC could be game changing, that you can just read it as if someone were speaking to you, right? And so that's where we see that being baked into these security technologies. Now, unfortunately, bad actors could also be using something like this, right? And you could think that there might be a generative AI solution that might be good at writing code. And so a hacker could then go to this solution, say, hey, I want you to, write me some malware, right? Now, I don't quite think that we're there yet. And I'm sure someone else has, I'm not the first person to think of it, right? But essentially it's leveraging these types of technologies to offload your work, right? And so then you get whatever efficiency, right, from the mix of the two. That's kind of where we're going to sit.
So, JT, let's talk about the best. How do we incorporate the best of our past practices with the best of what's emerging for what we really want which is the best cybersecurity strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as it goes for, just the best practices, um, I would pose a question, which would be, can something old also be new? And I'm not really trying to just be rhetorical. I think it's a very valid question. And it's really rooted in the concept of, what is the single most exploited attack vector? Hopefully, people are jumping out of their seats yelling phishing. That's really where we see things time and time again. Look at any of the big breach reports, and phishing is, or social engineering is always at the top for every industry, right? Recently, actually, a few of my colleagues covered the casino breach that happened not too long ago. I think it was last week, or a couple weeks ago. And that was a pure, good old fashioned social engineering attack where someone was able to pick up the phone, call the help desk, and say, "Hey, I'm locked out. Please help me reset my password." The problem is they weren't an employee of the casino. And before you know it, they had access, right, to their entire systems. And I think social engineering is so dangerous because it really preys on what I feel naturally humans want to help. They want to be good. They want to lend a helping hand when they can. And so attackers that are really good at this, which also maybe you could use some generative AI to do a phishing campaign, right? And make it sound very, very natural. They're very adept at kind of tugging those heartstrings or mimicking something that looks credible, right? And it's actually a malicious link, right? So my recommendation is, really training up your entire organization. Doesn't matter if you're a mom and pop shop or if you're, a full-fledged 100,000 person enterprise. Making sure that your first line of defense, your employees, they don't fall for things like this, right? They have maybe a SOC hotline where they can report malicious looking emails to their SOC to get vetted and make sure that it is what it says it is or it isn't. So that kind of falls part and parcel with just maintaining a really good security hygiene. And I touched on it before where I mentioned, you can have all the best tools, but if they can't give you insights, right? And if your employees still fall for phishing campaigns, what good are they, right?
JT, talk to me more about Sumo Logic. How are you helping your customers get a better handle on this modern approach to security?
Absolutely. So what we do at Sumo is we ingest everything. No matter how many solutions you're using, we pull all of that data in, and we pull in log data. So you're getting the richest data that you possibly can. And what we do is we analyze all of that for you so you don't have to sift through each of those logs line by line, which would be immensely tedious, as one can imagine. And then what we do is we find that needle in the haystack and we surface it to you on whatever channel you like, right? And we allow you to immediately start investigating those threats. As part of that, we do offer 3 different security solutions. The first, for folks that maybe have more of an emerging security practice, we have cloud infrastructure security. Then we also have bespoke audit and compliance use cases as well. And last but very much not least is our cloud SIM offering, which unlike legacy SIMs, this one is born in the cloud. AWS is our cloud of choice, and Sumo, as a matter of fact, has been cloud native in AWS ever since our inception nearly 12 years ago. And our cloud SIM is really designed for more of our advanced users who would already be in a SOC and have a variety of data sources that they need to pull from. And we're even taking some of the capabilities traditionally found in SOAR options like automation, and we're baking that into our SIM so our customers get that right out of the gate.
JT, before we close here, any customer best practices you want to share or points you want to emphasize before we close with our audience?
More than happy to. So without beating a dead horse, make sure you have the appropriate security trainings in place for your organization, practice good security hygiene. But in addition to that, always get your information from the source, right? The richer the information from your sources, the better information you have to act on should you need to. So again, in the context of Sumo, that's logs. Also, make sure that your solution centralizes your data in one place so that you're able to effectively analyze it. And last but very much not least, make sure your solution has the appropriate security attestations, like, let's just say, FedRAMP if you're working in the federal space, HIPAA, PCI. Make sure that your platform or your solution is compliant with all of those things that might be your industry might be beholden to.
Very well said. JT, thanks so much for your time and your insight today.
Oh, my pleasure, Tom. Thanks again for having me.
Well, thank our attendees as well. We appreciate the time you took out of your day to attend this session. I trust that you gained some valuable insights from what JT had to share today. Look forward to seeing you again at one of our upcoming sessions. And until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you for your time and attention today.